Bulavanaka and welcome to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. I'm your host Dion Davu, and joining us in studio today, two representatives of a very important organization here in Fiji. They carry out some very important work. Their name, of course, Lifeline Fiji, and they are a national charity which provides all Fijians experiencing a personal crisis with access to 24-hour crisis support and suicide prevention services. And representing Lifeline with us in studio today, we have Ms. Losana Musungawa, who is their Lifeline Fiji Manager Services, as well as Ms. Timaima Ravikandavu, who is their training officer and also a counselor at Lifeline Fiji. Ladies, we thank you very much for taking the time out to be with us on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind.
Thank you, Dion. It's good to be here this morning.
We thank you, of course, for making it in such a short notice as well. And no doubt our viewers and listeners will be eager to know more about Lifeline Fiji as an organization. Now, for you, Losana, as Lifeline Fiji's Manager Services, tell us a little bit more about yourself and the role that you play within Lifeline.
Okay. Currently, I'm holding a position of Manager Services. And it's quite interesting because it's a different area of working all together, dealing with people's and their well-being.
So basically, Losana, in your role as Lifeline Manager Services, you basically look after the day-to-day running of Lifeline, making sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, and of course the organization is running along smoothly. And for you, Timaima, in your role as training officer and also as a counselor, tell us a little bit more about that part of your job.
Thank you. I work with Losana and she's my immediate supervisor. So first and foremost, I look after crisis line as and when I'm rostered by my supervisor. That is attending to calls that comes in daily and even after hours. Secondly, I have been tasked the responsibility of training our staff when they come in and also provide training for organizations, individuals outside Lifeline Fiji who may require the service that we provide and the know-how of the service that we have to offer.
Thank you for that. And back to you, Losana. Around how long now has Lifeline been in operation here in Fiji?
I think I'll answer that, Dion. Thank you. Lifeline Fiji has been around for a while with the Methodist Church of Fiji as a program. That's pre-coup 1987. They've moved down to the west, Tumba Mission Hospital, because it was managed by Methodist Church in Fiji then. And in 2013, in 2009, they registered the program as a charitable organization, and then in 2013 it was registered as a non-governmental organization here, and the headquarters have shifted to Suva then.
And as an organization, what is Lifeline's main aim? What does Lifeline hope to achieve with its work?
Vinaka, Lifeline Fiji's main core business is suicide prevention, and we work towards prevention, intervention, and postvention. So it's on the 3 stages of the service of suicide prevention. That is before the act, intervening when someone is thinking or in the process of the act, and also reaching out to survivors or their families post-suicide attempt. We do that through our reaching out on the attending to their emotional well-being, and also undertaking community outreach sessions, empowering programs with the community.
And yes, at this moment in time, how large is the Lifeline organization? Excuse me. I mean, how many individuals do you have currently working for the organization? Do you have a number of offices around Fiji? Basically, how large is the Lifeline organization?
Okay. At the moment, we have 7 counselors and 3 in our core team as a leader. Yes, we have 10 altogether.
So that's just here in
Suva.
In Suva.
Yep.
Like we mentioned, Dian, we've just moved into Suva, and we have also a team of volunteers specialized for supporting the service, apart from the core team that Losana has just mentioned. We are also in the pipeline of establishing a regional coordinator in the West, and also a regional coordinator for the North. That is to expand the service to the 2 divisions, enabling us to reach more people with the service that we have to offer.
Thank you for that, Timama. That pretty much answered my next question, which was in regards to how plans going in regards to expanding the Lifeline organization Fiji. And of course, you've just managed to make out that there'll be an individual in the West as well as in the North. Now, Lifeline as an organization, where does it receive its funding from? Who helps Lifeline to do its work?
Thank you, Dion. First and foremost, like you mentioned earlier, that Lifeline is a full-time volunteer organization.
So everyone's a volunteer. They give their
Everyone is
time and their effort.
Yes. And on top of that, we have reached out to business houses. We thank Vodafone and Digicel for providing the service that they offer, which enable us to run the national toll-free line. We also acknowledge Fiji Motorbike Association, apologies on that. They have been supporting us for the past few years. We are in Suva, the Ministry of Health, the government through the Ministry of Health. Yes, we have few sponsors who have been there throughout our journey. And like I said, since we're volunteering, we're also reaching out to would-be supporters who would be able to support us to reach and save another life with the service that we have to offer.
Thank you for that, Timema. Now, you made mention of volunteers. So all members of the organization Lifeline are volunteers. Nobody there in the organization is paid a salary or, receives some sort of remuneration.
I think like you said, we are all volunteers, from our executive director right down to our youth members who have just been recruited.
And I also heard you say when you were answering the question that Lifeline partners with a few ministries as well. Now, what ministries would these be?
Ministry of Health. Our line minister is the Minister for Health, so we come under the mental health sector of the ministry, and we've been supported by them. We work hand in hand regarding the work that we do.
Thank you very much for that, Timima. Yes, with us in studio today, joining us from Lifeline Fiji, which is a national charity providing all Fijians experiencing a personal crisis with access to 24-hour crisis support and suicide prevention services. Yes, there are 2 representatives with us in studio today on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. Ms. Losana Musungawa, who is their Lifeline Fiji Manager Services, as well as Ms. Timima Ravuikandavu, who is their training officer, and also she is a counselor at Lifeline Fiji. We'll have more for you in our next segment of Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. Till then, I'm Dion Dam. Bulavinaka, and welcome back to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. I'm your host, Dion Ravu, and with us in studio today, 2 representatives of Lifeline Fiji, Ms. Losana Musungawa, who is their Lifeline Fiji Manager Services, as well as Ms. Timima Ravuikandavu. She is their training officer, as well as a counselor at Lifeline Fiji. Ladies, once again, we thank you very much for taking the time to be with us on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. And jumping back into the questions, for you, Losana, what types of services does Lifeline offer individuals?
At the moment, we have 4 services active in our organization. One is our crisis line, crisis and emotional support through our telephone system. We provide counseling to individuals who seek for help. And secondly, we have our community outreach, where we empower community to understand the signs and symptoms of suicide and understanding their emotional well-being. And the third one is our mentalk. With mentalk, we work together with men who have to know their personal triggers, and help them on how to manage it, and to differentiate on anger and violence, on how to manage their violence and anger, and also training and teaching them on their communication and listening skills.
I see. And all of these things that Lifeline offers to individuals. Now, certain individuals, these values, or rather these, what would you say, these attributes are somewhat lacking in their life. That's why, which leads them on a road to ruin, so to speak, that they feel they have no options left to themselves, and they have to take suicide. So, in other words, Lifeline Fiji offers a very valuable support service for these individuals who feel they have no avenue to nowhere else to turn to. It's very interesting, if you ask me. And yes, we want to Timaima, in your role as a counselor, what would you reckon are some of the key issues that Lifeline has noticed when it comes to matters of psychology, as in psychological trauma here in Fiji? Is it a widespread thing, or is it something that we as Fijians, as Itauke, we keep inside ourselves? Maybe we refuse to talk about it. What are some of the key issues that you feel that we suffer from here in Fiji?
Thank you, Don. With Lifeline Fiji, our banner, our identity is crisis support. So when we talk about crisis, it's almost anything. It can be a broken pencil to a class 1 student, year 1 student. It can be a relationship problem with a couple. It could be parental issues with a child and a parent. So when we talk about Lifeline service and crisis support, what we have found out with our organization, with those who have accessed our service, is the ability to cope. Because crisis happens, and it's a normal thing to have crisis happening. But the issue of the matter is how individuals cope, and where do they go to if they feel that they cannot cope any longer. And then when we look at a crisis, society defines crisis as weak. When a person is in crisis, we tend to judge them. We tend to give our advice. We tend to commend them negatively for what they're going through. This leads to, it does not help the person to cope with the situation. Society does not give that safe space where individuals can freely talk about what they feel and what they think. Scholars have said that for a person who's going through a crisis, verbally communicating that helps. So when society or when the environment does not allow that to happen by judging the person, the individuals, they bottle it up. Like I said, crisis cuts across age difference. It can range from a minor one to a major one. But what Lifeline looks at is the ability to cope. What are the coping mechanisms? How do they handle that? And like Losano was mentioning about the service that we have to offer, we also have a component of the service which is a referral mechanism that's already in place, because we are a support agency. We don't continue with the long-term support. So we partner up, we link up with other service delivery agencies who are out there, and we are the referral pathway for this individual for continued support. So like you mentioned, Dion, I hope that answers your question in terms of the service we have to offer and the issues coming up from the community or from the public.
Thank you for that, Timaima. And yes, just breaking it down very simply for our listeners and viewers at home. In other words, Lifeline seeks to help individuals by identifying their problems and then helping those individuals find the proper help with the other third-party organizations coming in to help
Exactly,
Lifeline.
Dion.
Thank you for that. And moving on, Timaima, now does Lifeline as an organization feel that we have a culture of silence that surrounds issues such as mental health, suicide, crisis, and when we have crisis, do you feel that we have a culture of silence here in Fiji? Maybe it's a traditional thing, and if so, how are efforts coming along to change people's attitudes in regards to this?
You've mentioned something that's really, really true, and it has been the language all along when it comes to crisis. So when we look at it from the perspective of the organization, that is why we have this service in place, actually to be precise, with a toll-free line where people can just call in without knowing who they're speaking with and without revealing their identity. It breaks that stigma around the issue on judgment and just being safe enough to talk about the issues. So silence has been a culture all along. We think that with crisis, what really brings about silence is when we are not given the safe space to speak about the issues. It's basically to talk about how I feel about my crisis. So when I'm judged or when I've been cut off, I tend to bottle that up inside. And you mentioned that it's in the society. When we think about talking of our issues, at times it's not about me who's not going through the crisis. Someone else is going through a crisis, and there's been judgmental attitude towards that person. I've been the third person who was watching. So because, for example, if the parents are judging their child, the third child who may be just watching, it can conceive that idea that if I come up with my issues, which is much worse, I will have the same repercussions. So why don't I just keep it to myself?
So it all comes back to individuals just bottling things
Exactly.
inside, and it just builds up over time, and of course it may lead to violence, to suicide, or something far
Exactly.
worse.
And that's why we have that safe space with Lifeline Fiji, where they can call in and talk about what they have to talk about.
Thank you very much for that, Timaima. Yes, with us today on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind from Lifeline Fiji. They're an organization which helps individuals who find themselves in times of crisis and, of course, who need someone else to talk to. With us in studio, Losana Musungao, who is their Lifeline Fiji Manager Services, as well as Timaima Ravuikandavu, who is a training officer as well as a counselor at Lifeline Fiji. I'm your host, Dion Davu, and we'll have more after the next segment. Bulvinaka, and welcome back to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. I'm your host, Dion Davu, and with us in studio today from Lifeline Fiji, two of their representatives, their manager services, Ms. Losana Musungawa, as well as one of their training officers and counselors, Ms. Timaima Ravuikandavu. Ladies, once again, we thank you for taking the time out to be with us on the show. And yes, during the ad break, we were talking about something very interesting, Timaima. You made mention to me that this culture of silence is a learned behavior. It's something that we learn from our parents, and their parents learn from their parents in turn. Now, could you please explain that a little bit more for our parents, for our viewers and listeners, rather?
Thank you, Dion. Simply come to think of it, every human has a mouthpiece, and it is meant for communicating. At the same time, when we look at our culture here in Fiji, the norm has been the adults say and the young ones listen. And when we define listening, then it's all about obeying without asking questions. But when we look at the era that we are in now, times have changed. There's a lot of influencing factors that has come by, and some are good and some are bad. But then we have learned, and obedience. When we define obedience, it's about sharing information and understanding what the core issue is about. But we have defined obedience as silence. You listen while I talk. We have learned that from our parents, and said to say that even nowadays we still do that with our children when we do parenting. I remember when I spoke with a parent a while ago, a few days back, he was blaming himself for the blunder the child has gone through, and the son is 26 years old. So he was really into it, blaming himself. And then I asked him a simple question. I asked, "Sir, would you tell me the parenting school that you went to?" Like the nurses, they went to nursing school, and teachers, they went to training school. "Can you please tell me which parenting school you went to?" And he said that he didn't. And I said, "Exactly. Would you be able to blame yourself for that blunder? Because no one taught you. You just came to that, and you just parented the way you have been parented." And that's where we talked about the silence that he had. And in the process, Lifeline Fiji was able to empower this particular parent to be able to change some of the things that he thinks that will help the communication between him and his son. So basically breaking the silence by communicating we may not be totally disagreeing or agreeing, but we can voice out our concerns and then let the elders decide because they may know better.
Thank you for that, Timama. Yes, and moving on with our question. Timama, you made mention of this crisis hotline. And I feel I better direct this question to Losana. Losana, can you tell us just a little bit more about this crisis hotline and what it actually does for individuals?
Okay. Our crisis line, basically, we're giving it out to communities where we go into our community outreach, where they can call. It's 24/7 available, and anyone can call in. It's 132-454.
So this line is for anyone who wishes to call in at any time of the night or
Yes.
day if they have any sort of issue that they feel that they need to talk to somebody about.
Yep.
And of course, this is not a paid service. This is absolutely toll-free.
It's a
Yeah.
tough.
And the number once again, Losana?
132-454.
So of course, there you have it for our viewers on television and our listeners at home. That number for Lifeline's crisis support toll-free line, 132-454. And moving on with our questions. Tell us more about Lifeline's mentor program and how things are coming along in regards to that initiative.
Thank you, Dion. With the mentor program, as far as our statistics have shown, 80% of our callers were men. That was post Winston, Winston. 80% of our callers were men. And we found out from the statistics that we have that men were vulnerable at that stage. But then when we go back to society in Fijian traditional setting, men are not allowed or are not expected to be that masculine person who holds it together, who is tough enough to endure and all those stuff. But when we reached the community, we found out that their resources has been totally destroyed. They do go to Talno sessions, to grog sessions, but to actually talk about the emotions that's enveloping them, stemming from the crisis that they went through after Winston, personally they cannot do that. So when we come in and then we sit one-on-one with them just to listen to their story, encouraging them to communicate to us, we found out that there was so much emotions bottled up. And that was a safe space. And then we encouraged them. When we left them on that particular day, we gave them a toll-free number whereby they can continue communicating. Dion, I'll give a very small example. There's a glass of water and you keep filling it up. You fill it up. There'll come a time that water will run over. And at times, when water runs over, it runs smoothly. It just sips over the cup. But at times, it drops down. It definitely damages everything else. For example, on your table, it'll wet the paper, your machines, and everything else. So that abrupt drop is what we're trying to avoid. If we can just take sips out gradually by speaking with the next person, tucking it over by somebody. So it takes skills to do that. And basically that's what Lifeline is in for, just to be that skillful listener who would be able to unpack or pour out from the cup of the emotional content of that cup, of that person, to be able to set the person free. And once the person has eliminated the emotional aspect of the crisis, we believe that every individual has the capability, the ability to make decisions for themselves. We don't make their decisions, even though we know what might work for them, but we don't decide. We facilitate the discussion so that they'll be able to make their own decisions. And it is indirectly a form of empowerment for individuals.
Thank you very much for that, Timama. Very concise answer, that one, from, of course, Miss Timama Rawikandavu, who is a training officer as well as a counselor at Lifeline Fiji. Also with us in studio, Miss Losana Musungawa, who is the Lifeline Fiji Manager Services. Now, these two ladies are in studio with us to tell us more about Lifeline Fiji and the very important service that they offer to all citizens of Fiji. Of course, do stay with us. I'm your host, Dion Davu, on Gold FM Speak Your Mind. We'll have more after the break. Pulvinaka and welcome back to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. I'm your host, Dion Ravu, and with us in studio today, representing Lifeline Fiji, their manager services, Ms. Losana Musungawa, as well as one of their training officers and counselors, Ms. Timaima Rawikandavu. Ladies, once again, we thank you very much for being with us today on the program. And moving on, Timaima, to you in your role as a counselor, this one I'd like to pose to you and for you to offer advice to our listeners and our viewers. Now, what are some of the simple ways that you would encourage someone who is offering to help someone else who has suffered some form of trauma or is in some form of trouble?
Thank you. What we would like to acknowledge is the courage to go to another person and say, I need help. That is a huge step to recovery, because for the person, he's hurting emotionally. When we talk about crisis, he's hurting. So he is in pain. He is wounded emotionally. And we do not, it's human nature. We don't acknowledge that we're weak. We don't acknowledge that we're hurting. We would like to bottle up and say, I'm okay. But then to come up and say, I need help, that is something commendable. And to be able to trust another person, to come up with the issues and trust another person. That is what we would like to encourage for our viewers, our listeners out there, the help-seeking behavior. Though not everyone is skillful in that, like I said earlier, there may be repercussions when you speak out. There could be judgmental projections towards the person. That's why we have our line here at Lifeline Fiji, our national toll-free line, because you'd be able to be listened to without being judged. And on top of that, you will be given the space to think out what would you like, what would you want as a person. Our responsibility, like I said earlier, is to facilitate that process of coming out of that situation.
I see. And yes, thank you for that, Timaima. Now, moving on, Losana, a question I wanted to ask you is, at this moment in time, does Fiji have a national suicide prevention strategy in place? And if not, what's being done about this? Are there any initiatives or strategies that are currently being developed by government along with Lifeline to help?
May I answer
Sure.
that? Yeah, thank you. I think Lasana was instrumental with the management team in putting up a national symposium on suicide prevention. If I'm right, Lasana, a few weeks ago, we had a national symposium championed by Ministry of Health here in Fiji, whereby we've put in place a framework for the ministry, for Lifeline Fiji, and the other mental hub sector here in Fiji, the service delivery agencies, whereby we can work hand in hand to combat suicide. As we speak, our director is getting ready to submit the outcome of that symposium to the National Committee on Prevention of Suicide, whereby it will be tabled, and they will put that up as a framework whereby the mental hub and the ministry itself will work on, and from there it will become what we will work on as a framework.
So, of course, Lifeline working very closely with the Ministry of Health to put in this national suicide prevention strategy, so to speak. So right now, at this moment in time, Fiji doesn't have a national suicide prevention strategy, but work is being done to facilitate that, to get that moving along, I see.
I believe the ministry has had something in place, maybe in writing, and also the ministry in its own capacity has been working on it. But now we have come together as the government arm of suicide prevention and the NGO arm of the Suicide Prevention Committee to work in collaboration for the same cause, suicide prevention in Fiji.
I see. So it's a collective effort by all the partners involved to help those who need help the most.
Yes, it is, Dion.
Thank you very much for that, Timaima. And moving on, you made mention in earlier segments about the crisis hotline and the calls. And of course, in the past, the question about two questions ago, you made mention of around 80% of callers being men post-tropical cyclone Winston. Now, very generally, between the two of you, how would you estimate, or how much would you estimate and say, how many calls has Lifeline received in the last year or so, or since this toll-free line has been set up?
Vinakadion, before our toll-free line came into place, we received, if I remember correct, about 1,000 calls in 2013, if I'm correct. Post Winston, we received about 5,000 calls.
So there was a dramatic increase.
Dramatic increase post Winston.
Of course, no doubt, a lot of individuals were psychologically affected by
Yes.
Tropical Cyclone Winston and the damage and
Yeah.
devastation. And of course, these people who calling up with the issues, this is not just people who have suicidal tendencies, or this is any sort of personal crisis that they feel they're going under and that they have no other avenue to turn to. They give Lifeline a
You
call.
said it right, Dion. Yes.
I see, because sometimes some of our members of the public here in Fiji, they don't really understand an organization and its services. So it's great to hear that Lifeline offers a service for people who feel like, I'm in trouble, I got no one to talk to, so I might as well give Lifeline a call.
Exactly.
Now, in your role as a training officer, you train other people to become counselors.
Yes.
I see.
And also, I train individuals who volunteer in our organization to be aware of core issues of Lifeline Fiji and the service that we provide.
And another question that comes to mind, who offers the training to you and your team in turn? Does the training come from overseas, or are there individuals from the Ministry of Health who come down and train you?
Thank you, Dion. Lifeline Fiji has been trained since its inception in Fiji by Lifeline Australia through the Uniting Care Community Services arm of Lifeline Australia. So they have been conducting our training. Our trainers, they come into the country, conduct training, and they go back.
And just a very quick one before we cut to our break. Do you encourage volunteers to join the organization? And if so, how can someone who's interested in joining Lifeline join Lifeline?
Thank you, Dion. Yes, Lifeline Fiji would very much like to hear and receive applications from volunteers for the service that we have to offer. Training is provided by us. You can either call us on 976-0480 or access our landline, which is 331. Sorry, I've got the line there. But you can also access us, young people. You can access us on our Facebook page. It's Lifeline Fiji. Like us on our page and communicate with us in terms of your interest to volunteer for the organization.
Thank you for that, Timaima. Yes, you've just heard from Timaima Rawikandavu, who is a training officer as well as a counselor at Lifeline Fiji. Also with us in studio, Ms. Losana Musungawa, who is Lifeline Fiji Manager Services, and they've been here with us in studio to tell us more about the very important work carried out by Lifeline. Of course, do stay with us. I'm your host, Dion Davu, and we'll have more in our final segment of Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. Mulvanaka, and welcome back to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. I'm Dion Davu, and joining us in studio today from Lifeline Fiji, Ms. Losana Musungawa, who is Lifeline Fiji's Manager Services, as well as Ms. Timaima Rawikandavu, who is their training officer, as well as a counselor. Ladies, once again, thank you very much for being with us in studio. We finally made it to the final segment of the afternoon. And yes, now to you, Timaima, this would be more of an opinion question. Do you feel that Fiji has a mental health problem and that adequate steps are being taken to address the issue?
Vinaka, Dion, the mental health issue is a global issue. It's not only for Fiji, it's a global thing. But in our own backyard, in our own nation, we are I believe the government of the day, agencies that has been working on this, they have been doing the best that they can to handle or to confront mental issues. Ministry of Health has been working very hard. There have been other organizations like us, to speak of Youth Champs for Mental Health, Fiji Alliance for Mental Health, Psychiatric Survivors Association. They've been working closely with the ministry, and also we've been working with them to combat mental health issues here in Fiji.
And how do you feel Lifeline Fiji's efforts to combat this culture of silence that we were talking about earlier on. And of course, with the other organizations, how do you feel that work is progressing in regards to combating this silence? Of course, you've said it yourself, after Tropical Cyclone Winston, 80% of the callers were men. So that shows that these men needed to get something off their chest. And of course, they turned to Lifeline, which was their avenue. Do you feel that this culture of silence is slowly but surely being eradicated, being eroded away?
Thank you, Dion. From where I'm standing as a counselor and also an outreach officer, I feel that we're doing the best that we can in terms of community outreach, and thank you to FBC for programs like this, whereby we will be able to inform the community and the public of the service that we have to offer, and they can help us by eradicating the culture of silence by reaching out to the service that we are providing. At the same time, our counterparts with the mental health hub that we are in, they are doing the work of reaching out into the community, into schools, into religious organizations, to be able to empower them to come up and speak up of issues that are relating to mental health issues.
Thank you for that, Timama. And Losana, turning very quickly to you, what are some of the other plans that Lifeline has in store for 2017? Will Lifeline as an organization will be growing larger? Are there more initiatives and strategies in place for 2017?
Yeah, currently, we're doing marketing our organizations with media, and we want to extend our service to the Northern Division as well and the Western as well. We're looking into extending our services to other parts of Fiji.
So plans are definitely in place to grow the organization.
To add on to that, Dion, may I think the management team are also in the process of collaborating with Ministry of Health, whereby we would like to put up a faith-based organization symposium, whereby we'll reach out to faith-based organizations here in Fiji to come together and educate them on the need to talk about mental issues and emotional well-being for, in particular, whereby we've found out that this is where people go to, the community they go to, their very go-to person. So we need to empower them on how to create that safe space to communicate, not only from a religious perspective, but also to recognize the emotional aspect of crisis that they come up with, and to be the referral point of from individuals to the service that we have to offer. So I think that's in the pipeline, and the talks are still in place, arrangements are still in place. There's still an ongoing process of collaboration with ministry, and we hope that will enlarge our scope of outreach in the near future for year 2017.
Thank you for that, Timama. And yes, coming to the final question of the segment, what would you like members of the public to know about Lifeline? Very quickly.
Thank you, Dion. If you are listening right now on air, and if you're watching the national television, we would like you to know that you are not alone. Whatever you're going through, be it a relationship problem, is it financial issues, we at Lifeline Fiji would like to hear you. We would like to listen to you, and we would like to understand you the way you're feeling right now. Please do not hesitate. If you have a pen and a paper right now, take down our toll-free number. It's 132454. It's a 24-hour service, and when I say toll-free, it is free. When you call, we pay, and it's a Vodafone and Digicel line. Please do not hesitate. Call us on this number. We would be able to listen and assist you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Timaima. Of course, you've just heard from Timaima Ravui Kandavu, who is a training officer and counselor at Lifeline Fiji, and her colleague as well, Ms. Losana Musungawa, who is Lifeline Fiji's Manager Services. Ladies, thank you very much for making the time out, taking the time to be with us today here on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind, of course. And for Gold FM's Speak Your Mind, I am Dion Ravu. Join us again next week.